The call came at 3 a.m., jolting Alex Mitchell from a fitful sleep. His uncle Gerald's voice, usually commanding and self-assured, now trembled with urgency. "Alex, I need you at Mercy Hospital. Now." The line went dead before Alex could respond. As he navigated the empty streets of Boston, his mind raced through possibilities. Uncle Gerald, the family patriarch since grandfather Mitchell's death 15 years ago, had never shown weakness. Never asked for help. The same man who'd built Mitchell Industries from a small legal consulting firm into a regional powerhouse was now calling him in the dead of night. The fluorescent lights of Mercy Hospital's 6th floor cast harsh shadows across Gerald's gaunt face. Cancer had ravaged him quickly, diagnosed just 3 months ago, now entering its final stages. Alex hesitated at the doorway, his Brooks Brothers suit feeling like armor against what was to come. "Lock the door," Gerald wheezed, his eyes darting to the corridor. Alex complied, noting how his uncle's fingers clutched a worn leather portfolio. "Sit down, boy. What I'm about to tell you, it changes everything." Alex settled into the vinyl chair, the leather of his briefcase cool against his palm. At 35, he'd built his own reputation as a ruthless corporate attorney, but something in his uncle's voice made him feel like a rookie again. "Your grandfather." Gerald's voice cracked. "The inheritance. The foundation of everything we have. I forged his will." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alex's throat tightened. "What?" 15 years ago, when your grandfather died, I found 2 wills. The real one left everything to a woman named Catherine Walsh and her son. Your grandfather had a second family none of us knew about." Gerald's laugh turned into a cough. "I destroyed it. Created a new one. Everything came to me instead." Alex's legal mind kicked into overdrive, calculating statutes of limitations, potential criminal charges, civil liabilities. But another part of him saw the Mitchell building downtown, the hundreds of employees, his cousin Sarah's private school, his mother's comfortable retirement. "The money built everything we have," Gerald continued. "But that boy, Catherine's son, he deserved half of this. Maybe more." Another rattling cough. "His name is James Walsh. He's in Seattle now. Works as a mechanic. Never had the chances we had." "Why are you telling me this?" Alex asked, though he already knew. As the family's legal expert, as the one person who could understand the full implications. "Because you're the only one who'll know what to do with this." Gerald pushed the portfolio toward him with trembling hands. "All the evidence is here. The original will, Catherine's letters, photos, everything. I'm dying, Alex. This secret dies with me, unless I do something about it," Alex finished. The weight of the portfolio felt like lead in his hands. Gerald's eyes closed. "Your mother can never know. It would destroy her. Sarah's wedding is in 2 months. The company, all those people depend on us now." Alex stood, the portfolio tucked under his arm. Through the window, he could see the Mitchell building's illuminated sign piercing the pre-dawn darkness. 15 years of lies. A fortune built on fraud. And now the power to unravel it all rested in his hands. "I need your word," Gerald whispered. "Promise me you'll protect them." Alex looked down at his uncle, the man who'd mentored him, funded his education, launched his career. The man who'd stolen another family's future. "I'll do what's right," he said finally. Gerald's face crumpled. "That's what I was afraid of." As Alex walked through the hospital corridors, his phone buzzed. A text from his mother, "Is everything okay? Why did Gerald call you?" He stared at the message, the portfolio heavy against his side. In Seattle, a man named James Walsh was starting another day, unaware that his life was about to change. And Alex Mitchell, who'd built his reputation on finding the truth, now had to decide if some truths were better left buried. The sun was rising as he reached his car, casting long shadows across the parking lot. His uncle's words echoed in his mind, "This secret dies with me, unless..." Alex placed the portfolio on the passenger seat, his hand lingering on its worn surface. Inside lay enough evidence to tear his family apart, or right a 15-year-old wrong. The choice, and all its consequences, now belonged to him. The leather portfolio sat untouched on Alex's desk for 3 days. He'd cancelled appointments, citing a family emergency, and buried himself in research. His grandfather's death certificate, property records, old newspaper clippings, anything to verify Gerald's story without opening that damning package. The annual Mitchell Industries board meeting loomed next week. His cousin Sarah, newly appointed CFO, had been calling hourly about the quarterly reports he needed to review. But all Alex could see was his grandfather's signature on company documents, wondering how many other lies were hidden in plain sight. When he finally opened the portfolio, the evidence was devastating. Photos of his grandfather with Catherine Walsh spanned decades, holidays, vacations, intimate family moments. Their son, James, had his grandfather's eyes. But it was the financial records that made Alex's blood run cold. The initial seed money for Mitchell Industries, all $5 million, had come from liquidating properties meant for James and Catherine. Gerald had used their stolen inheritance to secure the loans that built the company's first office building. Every dollar of their current success was tainted. "Coffee's getting cold," a voice said, startling him. Linda Chen, his legal assistant of 8 years, stood in the doorway. She'd been watching him spiral for days. "Also, your mother's in the lobby." Alex scrambled to hide the documents. "What? Why?" She mentioned something about Gerald being moved to hospice. Linda's eyes flickered to the scattered papers. "Want me to tell her you're in a meeting?" Before Alex could answer, Patricia Mitchell swept into the office. At 62, she still commanded attention in her Chanel suit and pearls. "Darling, you look terrible. Haven't you been sleeping?" "Mom, I'm in the middle of something dash. Your uncle's asking for you." She settled into a chair, either ignoring or not noticing his discomfort. "The doctors say it could be any day now. Whatever this urgent work is, surely it can wait." Alex glanced at the documents on his desk. Property deeds. Bank transfers. A paper trail of betrayal that led right to their doorstep. "It really can't." "Speaking of work," Patricia continued, "Sarah mentioned you haven't signed off on the quarterly reports. The board meeting dash." "I know about the board meeting." Alex's voice came out sharper than intended. "I know about everything. The company, the loans, how it all started." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand froze on her purse. "What do you mean?" Alex pulled out one of the photos, his grandfather at what looked like a Christmas dinner, his arm around Catherine Walsh. James, maybe 7 years old, proudly displaying a model airplane. The color drained from his mother's face. "Where did you get that?" "Gerald told me everything." Alex leaned forward. "Mom, did you know? About Catherine and James, about the will?" Patricia's lips trembled. "Your uncle built this company from nothing. Everything we have dash was stolen." The words exploded out of him. "Every penny of our success belonged to them. And now there's a man in Seattle working as a mechanic while we live off his inheritance." "Lower your voice," Patricia hissed. "These walls aren't as thick as you think." As if on cue, Sarah appeared in the doorway, designer heels clicking on hardwood. "Bad time. I need those signatures, Alex. The shareholders are getting nervous." Alex looked from his mother's pale face to his cousin's expectant smile. Sarah, who'd just put a deposit on $1 million wedding venue. Who'd never worked a day outside the family business. "The reports need reviewing," he said carefully. "I found some irregularities in the original incorporation documents." Sarah's smile faltered. What kind of irregularities? Nothing serious, Patricia cut in smoothly. Alex is just being thorough. Aren't you, darling? The weight of their expectations pressed down on him like a physical force. His mother's pleading eyes. Sarah's growing suspicion. 15 years of privilege built on someone else's loss. I need more time, he said finally. To make sure everything's in order. Time. Sarah laughed. The meeting's in 6 days. The shareholders dash. The shareholders deserve the truth. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Sarah took a step back. What's going on? Mom mentioned Uncle Gerald gave you some kind of documents. It's nothing, Patricia said quickly. Your cousin's just overwhelmed. Perhaps we should postpone the board meeting dash. No. Alex stood. No more delays. No more lies. He turned to Sarah. You might want to postpone those wedding deposits. There are going to be some changes. Are you threatening me? Sarah's voice rose. Over what? Some old papers Gerald gave you when he was drugged out of his mind. Who do you think the board will believe? Sarah, Patricia warned, but the damage was done. I'm not threatening anyone, Alex said quietly. I'm promising to do my job. As legal counsel, as a Mitchell, and as someone who still believes the truth matters. Sarah stormed out, already dialing her phone. Patricia lingered, her face ashen. Your uncle was trying to protect us. Everything he did was fraud. Alex held up the original will. And now I have proof. You'll destroy this family. Gerald already did that. Alex turned to the window, looking out at the city his family's lies had built. The question is whether we try to make it right. Patricia's voice hardened. You're not the only one with access to the board. Think very carefully about your next move, Alex. Some truths are better left buried with the dead. She left him alone with the evidence, the threats, and the crushing weight of legacy. In Seattle, James Walsh was still oblivious to the storm about to break. But here in Boston, the first tremors were already shaking the foundations of everything the Mitchells had built. Alex's phone buzzed, a text from Linda, Sarah's calling an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning. Looks like they're not waiting for those signatures after all. Dawn found Alex in his mother's garden, watching her methodically deadhead roses as if the world wasn't crumbling around them. The emergency board meeting was in 3 hours, but Patricia Mitchell maintained her routine with iron discipline. I didn't sleep either, she said without looking up. Her pruning shears snipped with surgical precision. Kept thinking about the summer your grandfather taught you to swim. You were terrified of the deep end, but he wouldn't let you quit. Said a Mitchell never backs down from a challenge. Mom. Alex stepped closer, autumn leaves crunching under his feet. We need to talk about what Gerald told me. No, we don't. Snip. Another dead rose head fell. Your uncle is dying, confused. Whatever he said I saw the proof. Alex pulled out the original will, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. Grandfather's signature. The notary's stamp. DNA test results proving James is his son. It's all real. Patricia's shears froze mid-cut. Put that away before the neighbors see. The neighbors? Alex laughed bitterly. That's what you're worried about? Not the fact that Gerald stole millions from his own brother's child. Half-brother, Patricia corrected sharply. Then, softer, you don't understand what it was like back then. When your grandfather died, the company was leveraged to the hilt. One bad quarter from bankruptcy. If that will had gone public, everything would have collapsed. So that justified stealing a child's inheritance. It justified protecting our family. The shears clattered to the ground. Gerald did what he had to do. He took that money and built something lasting. How many families depend on Mitchell Industries now? How many children got to go to college because of the jobs we created? Using stolen money, Alex pressed. Everything we have gave you the life you have now. Patricia finally turned to face him. Your law degree. Your position. All those principles you're so proud of, they were bought and paid for with the same money you're condemning. The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. Every opportunity, every advantage he'd ever had. His mother saw the realization in his face and pressed her advantage. Come to the board meeting. Sign the reports. We'll find a way to make it right with James Walsh quietly, set up a trust fund, give him a position in the company. But if you go public with this. She touched his cheek gently. You'll destroy more lives than you save. For a moment, Alex wavered. Then his phone buzzed, a message from Judge William Cooper, his old mentor. Got your message. Come by chambers before the meeting. Urgent. I have to go, Alex said, stepping back from his mother's touch. But this isn't over. It could be, she whispered. Just let it go, Alex. Please. The courthouse was quiet at this early hour. Judge Cooper's chambers smelled of leather and old books, a refuge of order in Alex's chaotic world. The judge, now in his 70s, had been his father's best friend before the accident. Had helped guide Alex through law school, his first cases, the complex maze of corporate law. Sit down, son, Cooper said, studying him over wire-rimmed glasses. You look like hell. Alex collapsed into the familiar leather chair. I need your advice, Bill. Professional and personal. About Gerald's confession. At Alex's startled look, Cooper smiled grimly. Your grandfather was my client before he was your father's friend. I helped him draft that original will. You knew. Alex felt the ground shift under him again. All this time. Suspected. Cooper leaned back, fingers steepled. But suspecting isn't proving. Gerald covered his tracks well. The statute of limitations on the criminal charges ran out years ago, but the civil liability. He whistled low. If this goes public, Mitchell Industries won't survive. What about James Walsh? Doesn't he deserve to know? Deserve? Cooper's eyes sharpened. Tell me something, Alex. When you prosecuted that insider trading case last year, did the CEO's children deserve to lose their home? When you broke up that price-fixing scheme, did all those laid-off workers deserve to lose their pensions? That was different. They broke the law. And you upheld it. Righteously. Because it wasn't your family on the line. Cooper leaned forward. Law without mercy is just vengeance. Your grandfather understood that, it's why he kept Catherine and James secret. Not from shame, but to protect everyone involved. So I should just bury the truth? Like Gerald did? No. Cooper stood, walking to his window. You should find a way to make it right that doesn't destroy everything in the process. Justice isn't always about exposure, Alex. Sometimes it's about restoration. Sarah's calling for my disbarment, Alex said quietly. Claims I'm violating attorney-client privilege by investigating the company's origins. Are you? Technically, no. I found evidence of fraud affecting current shareholders. I have a duty to investigate. Cooper nodded slowly. Then maybe that's your angle. Focus on protecting current stakeholders while finding a way to make restitution. But Alex. He turned, his expression grave. Be careful. I knew your grandfather, respected him. But Gerald? He's always been willing to do whatever it takes to protect what he sees as his. Alex's phone buzzed again. Linda, board members arriving early. Sarah's father is with them. They're reviewing removal procedures. I have to go. Alex stood, straightening his tie. The board meeting. Remember what I said about restoration, Cooper called after him. And Alex? Your father would be proud of you for asking the hard questions. Just make sure you're ready for the answers. As Alex hurried down the courthouse steps, another text came through. This one from an unknown number, Mr. Mitchell. This is James Walsh. Your assistant contacted me. Said it was urgent. What's this about my father? Alex stopped dead in the morning crowd, staring at his phone. In 1 hour, the board would vote on his removal. In his briefcase, he carried enough evidence to tear apart 2 families. And now James Walsh, the man whose life Gerald's actions had changed forever, was finally reaching out. The choice he made in the next hour would change everything. Justice or mercy? Truth or stability? Family loyalty or professional integrity? The deep end of the pool was waiting, and this time, there was no one to teach him how to swim. The Mitchell Industries boardroom felt like a courtroom on execution day. 20 pairs of eyes tracked Alex as he entered, their usual deference replaced by wary hostility. Sarah sat at Gerald's usual place, her father Richard beside her. The message was clear, the succession had already begun. Linda slipped him a note as he took his seat. James Walsh booked a flight to Boston. Arrives tomorrow morning. Alex crumpled the paper, aware of Sarah watching the gesture. His cousin's perfectly styled exterior couldn't hide the triumph in her eyes. Before we begin, Richard said, standing, we have an unexpected addition to the agenda. My brother Gerald has asked to address the board via video conference. The massive screen flickered to life, showing Gerald in his hospice room. The cancer had ravaged him further, but his eyes burned with familiar intensity. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I come before you today with a heavy heart. It seems my nephew has chosen to repay years of family loyalty with betrayal. Alex felt the room's attention shift, heavy as a physical weight. Uncle Gerald dash. Let me finish. Gerald's voice cracked. Alex has been investigating old company records, making accusations about the company's founding. He claims to have evidence of impropriety. What he hasn't told you is that these allegations serve only one purpose, to position himself to seize control of Mitchell Industries. Murmurs rippled through the room. Alex stood, his chair scraping back. That's not true. No. Gerald's laugh turned into a cough. Then explain why you've been meeting secretly with venture capitalists. Why you've been reviewing hostile takeover procedures. Why you contacted James Walsh. The blood drained from Alex's face. Linda had used his private office line to call Walsh. Which meant. My office is bugged, he said slowly, turning to Sarah. You've been spying on me. We've been protecting the company, Richard cut in smoothly. After your erratic behavior these past weeks, we had to take precautions. Erratic? Alex pulled out the original will, slapping it on the polished mahogany table. You mean discovering that the company's initial funding came from a fraudulent inheritance? That Gerald stole millions from his own brother's child to build this empire? Baseless accusations, Gerald wheezed from the screen. From a man desperate to maintain control now that Sarah's promotion threatens his position. I have proof. Alex reached for his briefcase, but Sarah was faster. You mean these? She pulled out a stack of documents, identical copies of everything in his portfolio. The board has already reviewed them. Thoroughly. Our forensics experts confirmed their elaborate forgeries. Alex felt the ground shift under him. They'd known. They'd planned this. Those are original documents dash. Created by you, Richard said sadly. In a misguided attempt to undermine Gerald's legacy and prevent Sarah's succession. The timestamps on the digital files trace back to your personal computer. That's impossible. But even as he spoke, Alex remembered his mother's warning, Gerald would do anything to protect what he saw as his. The evidence is clear, Gerald said from the screen. My nephew, consumed by ambition, fabricated allegations against his own family. Used his position as legal counsel to access confidential documents. Violated his fiduciary duty to this company and his ethical obligations as an attorney. All lies, Alex protested, but he could see he was losing the room. The board members avoided his eyes, their expressions a mix of disappointment and disgust. Sarah stood, smoothing her silk blouse. Given these revelations, I move to suspend Alex Mitchell from his position as legal counsel, pending a full investigation of his actions. Furthermore, I recommend referring this matter to the State Bar Association for review of his law license. You can't dash, Alex started, but Richard cut him off. All in favor? Hands rose around the table like a wave. Only Linda, standing in the corner, kept her arms firmly crossed. The motion passes, Richard announced. Alex, please surrender your company ID and clear out your office. Security will escort you from the building. This isn't over, Alex said, his voice steady despite the rage and betrayal churning inside him. The truth dash. The truth, Gerald interrupted, is that you've destroyed your career and your family's trust for nothing. I tried to warn you, boy. Some secrets are better left buried. As security approached, Alex locked eyes with his uncle on the screen. You taught me that a Mitchell never backs down from a challenge. Remember? Get him out, Sarah ordered, but Alex was already moving. He paused at the door, turning to face the board one last time. You all deserve to know what your success is built on. And you will. Soon. The elevator ride to the lobby felt like a descent into exile. Linda waited by his office, holding a box of his personal items. They're sweeping your computer now. But they won't find what they're looking for. Alex looked at her sharply. She smiled, patting her tablet. I made copies. Of everything. Including the surveillance footage of Sarah planting those forged documents on your system last night. For the first time that morning, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. Why? Because my father was an accountant who went to prison for keeping quiet about corporate fraud. Some of us still believe the truth matters. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Sarah's work, no doubt, ensuring his disgrace would be public. His phone buzzed with a message from James Walsh, just landed early. Where can we meet? Linda touched his arm. What's the play now, boss? Alex watched the reporters surge forward, cameras flashing. In his pocket, the original will felt like it was burning a hole. Somewhere in a hospice room, Gerald was probably congratulating himself on outmaneuvering his nephew. Sarah would be calling her wedding planner, secure in her victory. His mother would be tending her roses, pretending all was well. But they'd forgotten something crucial. Alex hadn't spent 15 years as a corporate lawyer without learning how to plan for war. The play, he said quietly, is to let them think they've won. While we prepare to show them what a real hostile takeover looks like. His phone buzzed again. Judge Cooper, heard what happened. Remember what I said about restoration? Time to get creative, son. My chambers, 1 hour. Bring Walsh. The reporters reached them, shouting questions. Alex straightened his tie, put on his best corporate smile, and prepared to feed them exactly the story Sarah expected. Sometimes, he reflected, the best revenge wasn't exposing the truth. It was letting your enemies think they'd buried it. Judge Cooper's private library had become a war room. Maps of corporate holdings covered antique tables, financial records spilled from leather chairs, and in the center of it all, James Walsh stood studying a photo of the grandfather he'd never known. He has my hands, James said quietly, touching the image. At 40, he had the weathered look of a man who'd worked with those hands his whole life. Same knuckles, same scars. Used to think I got them from working on engines. Alex watched him from Cooper's desk, where he and Linda had spent the last 6 hours building their case. James had arrived expecting answers about his father. Instead, he'd walked into a master class in corporate warfare. The problem isn't proving fraud, Cooper explained, tapping a stack of documents. Linda's surveillance footage of Sarah planting evidence demolishes their credibility. But proving the original inheritance theft would trigger a shareholder panic. Stock would plummet, thousands would lose their jobs. And that helps who, exactly? James set down the photo. Look, I appreciate you telling me the truth about my father. But I'm a mechanic from Seattle. I fix machines, not corporations. That's exactly why we need you, Alex said, spreading out a complex organizational chart. You're not just the rightful heir to half the company. You're our chance to save it. Linda pulled up financial projections on her tablet. Mitchell Industries is vulnerable. Gerald's illness, Sarah's rushed promotion, the hasty wedding plans, it all points to a succession crisis. Shareholders are nervous. And nervous shareholders, Cooper added, are receptive to new leadership. Especially when that leadership has legitimacy and a clear vision for ethical reform. James laughed harshly. You want me to run the company? I don't know the first thing about Dash. We don't want you to run it, Alex interrupted. We want you to help us fix it. There's a difference. He outlined the plan they'd spent hours crafting. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its impact. James listened, his mechanic's mind breaking down the complex corporate machinery into manageable parts. It could work, he said finally. But why go through all this? Why not just expose everything? Because exposure without transformation is just destruction, Cooper replied. Alex's father understood that. It's why he taught Alex to fix problems, not just fight them. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Linda checked the security feed on her tablet, then relaxed. It's your mother. Patricia Mitchell entered like a queen in exile, her Chanel suit replaced by simple slacks and a sweater. She carried a familiar leather briefcase, Alex's father's old case. Hello, James, she said softly. You look so much like him. James stiffened. Mrs. Mitchell, I dash. Please. She held up a hand. I've had 15 years to prepare for this moment. To decide what I would say when the truth finally came out. She set the briefcase on Cooper's desk. Inside are records your father kept. Projects he wanted to pursue, community initiatives he believed in. Gerald ignored them all in favor of pure profit. But you deserve to know what kind of man your father was. Alex watched his mother carefully. Why now? Because I visited Gerald this afternoon. He was. She swallowed hard. He was altering company records. Backdating documents. Using his last hours to bury the truth even deeper. And I realized, this has to end. She turned to James. What was stolen from you can't be fully repaid. But we can honor your father's legacy by making the company what he always wanted it to be. Linda's tablet chimed. Sarah's giving a press conference. Announcing her engagement party for tonight. All major shareholders invited. Perfect timing, Cooper said. If we move now dash. No. Alex stood, a new plan forming. Not yet. Let her have her party. Let them all celebrate thinking they've won. Because tomorrow morning. He pulled up the company's articles of incorporation on his laptop. There, buried in the fine print Gerald had never bothered to read, was the key to everything. What's tomorrow morning? James asked. The annual shareholder meeting, Linda answered, catching Alex's meaning. Where they have to formally approve Sarah's appointment as CEO. And where any stakeholder, Alex added, can challenge the succession with proof of material misrepresentation by current management. Patricia touched the briefcase containing her husband's dreams. They won't see it coming. No, Alex agreed. They won't. Because they think they've already destroyed all the evidence. But there's one document they don't know about. One that changes everything. He turned to James. Your father believed in building things that last. In fixing what's broken instead of throwing it away. That's what you do every day as a mechanic, isn't it? Take broken machines and make them work again. James nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want me to help you rebuild the company? Not tear it down. Exactly. Alex looked around the room, at Linda's quiet determination, Cooper's strategic mind, his mother's belated courage, and James's inherited strength. Together, we can make it what it always should have been. But first we have to break it a little, James finished, a smile playing at his lips. Good thing you've got a mechanic on your team. As they finalized their plans, Alex's phone lit up with an invitation to Sarah's engagement party. The message dripped with false sympathy: family should stick together, cousin. Last chance to admit your mistakes and come home. Alex showed it to James. What do you think? Should we make an appearance? James picked up the photo of their grandfather. You know what's funny? In my garage, we have this saying: sometimes you have to strip an engine down to nothing before you can rebuild it right. Then let's go strip this engine, Alex said, pocketing the invitation. I believe we have a party to crash. The annual shareholder meeting of Mitchell Industries opened like a symphony of power, dark suits, leather portfolios, the murmur of billion-dollar deals being discussed over coffee and croissants. Sarah stood at the center of it all, resplendent in victory, her engagement ring catching the morning light. Alex watched from the back of the auditorium, Linda beside him cataloging each arrival. James waited in Judge Cooper's chambers, ready for his cue. Everything hinged on timing, and on one document Gerald had never known existed. Last chance to back out, Linda whispered, but Alex barely heard her. His attention was fixed on his mother, entering the auditorium with a familiar leather briefcase. Patricia Mitchell's face betrayed nothing as she took her seat in the front row, but her white-knuckled grip on the briefcase spoke volumes. Richard took the podium, beaming with paternal pride. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's formal proceedings, I'd like to address the unfortunate rumors surrounding my nephew's recent departure from the company. A slide appeared on the massive screen, doctored financial records suggesting Alex's alleged corruption. Several shareholders shifted uncomfortably, remembering yesterday's news coverage of his disgrace. Rest assured, Richard continued, the situation has been contained. Mitchell Industries remains strong, and under Sarah's leadership. Point of order. Alex stood, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. Before we proceed, I believe the shareholders should review some additional documentation. Sarah's perfect smile faltered. Security, please remove Mr. Mitchell. He's no longer authorized. Actually, Linda interrupted, distributing tablets to key board members. As a minority shareholder, he has the right to present evidence of material misrepresentation by management. Article 7, Section 12 of the company bylaws. The tablets came to life, displaying the surveillance footage of Sarah planting false evidence in Alex's office. The room erupted in whispers. Doctored footage, Richard declared, but his voice lacked conviction. More desperate attempts to dash. This isn't about me, Alex said, moving to the front of the room. This is about the truth. About what Mitchell Industries was meant to be. He turned to his mother. Show them. Patricia stood, her hands steady now as she opened the briefcase. 15 years ago, my husband, the company's chief legal counsel, prepared a document. A contingency he never had to use because he died before Gerald's fraud came to light. She withdrew a sealed envelope. This is his sworn affidavit detailing the original will's theft and Gerald's subsequent actions. He knew, you see. Knew what his brother was planning. And he prepared for this day. Convenient, Sarah sneered, that this appears now, when Gerald is too ill to defend himself. The doors burst open. Gerald Mitchell entered in a wheelchair, pushed by James Walsh. The room fell silent. "Hello, Sarah." Gerald's voice was weak but clear. "I believe I still have voting rights as chairman. And I have something to say." Sarah's face drained of color. "Uncle Gerald, you should be resting. I should be making things right." Gerald gestured for James to wheel him forward. "This man is my brother's son. The true heir to half of Mitchell Industries. And everything Alex said about what we did, is true." The shareholders erupted in chaos. Richard lunged for the podium, but Cooper appeared, flanked by SEC investigators. "The Securities and Exchange Commission," Cooper announced, "has been provided with evidence of long-term financial fraud and misrepresentation to shareholders." However, he raised his voice over the growing tumult. "They've also been presented with a restructuring plan that would protect the company's assets and employees while ensuring proper restitution." Alex stepped forward, James beside him. "Mitchell Industries was founded on a lie, but it doesn't have to end in one. My father, and James's father, wanted this company to be more than just profitable. They wanted it to matter." He outlined their plan, a restructured board with James as co-chairman, focusing on ethical business practices and community investment. A trust to compensate shareholders affected by the fraud. A foundation in their father's name to fund technical education and small business development. "The choice is yours," Alex told the shareholders. "We can tear everything down with lawsuits and investigations, or we can rebuild something better. Together." The vote was close, but in the end, the shareholders chose stability over scandal. Sarah resigned, her engagement postponed indefinitely. Richard took early retirement. And Gerald, in his final days, signed a full confession, finally unburdening himself of 15 years of lies. 6 months later, Alex stood in his restored office, watching James chat with employees in the lobby. The mechanic-turned-chairman had kept his coveralls, insisting on personally inspecting their new technical training center. Linda appeared with the morning reports. "Stock's up again. Turns out ethical business practices are good for the bottom line." "Who knew?" "My father did," Alex said softly. "And his brother. They just took different paths to prove it." His phone buzzed, a message from his mother. She was hosting dinner for James and his family, continuing their slow journey toward healing. Some wounds would never fully close, but they were learning to build something new around them. On his desk, a framed photo showed 2 young brothers in a garage, working on an old car. They were both smiling, both believing in the future they would build. Alex touched the frame gently, remembering Judge Cooper's words about restoration. Sometimes the hardest part wasn't exposing the truth or achieving justice. Sometimes the hardest part was finding the wisdom to know what to break, what to save, and what to rebuild from the pieces left behind. Outside his window, the Mitchell Industries sign still stood tall against the Boston skyline. But now it cast a different shadow, not of secrets and lies, but of second chances and renewed purpose. The price of truth had been high, but its value, Alex reflected, was beyond measure.